And in response to 25% tariffs President Trump put into effect on foreign cars and car parts, automaker Stellantis announced a pause on production at some of its Canadian and Mexican assembly plants. And as a result, some temporary layoffs at the company's plants in Michigan and Indiana.
I agree with the intent and what they're trying to do with the tariffs and bring jobs back. I just think the immediate effect right here, I mean, look, they just made the announcement yesterday afternoon. Is when Trump made the announcement, and Stellantis didn't waste no time announcing 900 people are going to be affected. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg.
GM is laying off about 200 workers at its Factory Zero plant in Detroit, while Stellantis is pausing production at the Warren Truck Assembly plant, where about 1,000 workers will be off the job.
Within 24 hours, the fallout began. Stellantis responded with immediate factory shutdowns in Canada and Mexico, two major production hubs. 4,500 Canadian jobs and 2,500 Mexican jobs wiped out overnight. Not in a month, not next quarter, immediately. It was supposed to be a 90-day pause, but after just over a fortnight, Donald Trump changed his mind, saying massive tariffs would be reimposed in a matter of weeks.
We're going to set the tariff. We just set the tariff. It's something that we think that will happen, I'd say, over the next couple of weeks. Wouldn't you say? I think so. Over the next 2-3 weeks. We'll be setting the number, and we're going to pick, could be for China too, could be for China.
That April 2nd announcement sent shockwaves through boardrooms from Detroit to Turin. A 25% tariff on all imported vehicles and parts, everything from transmissions to electronics, suddenly making cross-border manufacturing a liability instead of an advantage. And no company is feeling the pain quite like Stellantis. The dust hasn't even settled yet. Just yesterday, April 29th, the Trump administration announced a partial reimbursement plan for automakers, offering 3.75% of vehicle value in year one, a band-aid on a gushing wound.
Is coming in the form of an executive order that he'll be signing later. We learned about this in the press briefing. And what this EO is expected to do is provide relief to the automakers in the United States. As you remember, they were facing some pretty significant tariffs.
If they can't make it in time because they have to do it here, otherwise they haven't, I'm giving them a little bit of a break, right? They took in parts from all over the world. I don't want that. I want them to make their parts here. But I gave them a little bit of time. It's 15% and then 10% of the parts.
This temporary financial lifeline raises more questions than it answers about long-term sustainability in the industry. For thousands of workers, the impact isn't theoretical. It's devastatingly real. 900 American workers joined 4,500 Canadian counterparts in unemployment lines. Warren stamping and Kokomo transmission plants, once bustling with activity, now eerily quiet. We don't know what happens after the couple of weeks, one laid-off worker told reporters. We don't have a clear indication of what that is yet. Behind those numbers are real people. A single mother in Windsor, Ontario, just laid off from the Chrysler Pacifica assembly line, now can't make her mortgage payment. Her story multiplied thousands of times across North America. Industry analysts are already warning of cascading tariff war-driven job losses, extending far beyond these initial layoffs. The Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association predicts a ripple effect that could touch every corner of the industry. Was this policy shift really a tactical move or a game changer for the entire auto industry? Stellantis' sprawling empire of iconic American brands is crumbling brick by brick. Let's break down what's happening to each nameplate. Jeep, the crown jewel, is stumbling hard. The Compass factory in Toluca, Mexico shut down April 7th, 2 weeks before its scheduled restart date. The ripple effects are already visible at dealerships across America. Showrooms that would normally hold dozens of Jeeps now have just 2 or 3 sitting out front. 8-week wait times for new models are causing potential buyers to walk away. Is the legendary Jeep brand at risk of losing its adventurous edge? Dodge muscle cars are feeling the squeeze as steel and component costs soar. The Brampton, Ontario plant producing Charger and Challenger went dark after tariffs bloated material costs. 1,000 workers affected in that operation alone. Dodge fans aren't quiet, especially when their engines are threatened. Online forums are ablaze with frustration. One Michigan dealership owner reports a 50% drop in Charger and Challenger test drives, the lifeblood of muscle car sales. Can Dodge sustain its performance legacy if production halts become the norm? Ram trucks face severe parts shortages, leaving contractors and farmers in the lurch. Ram 1500 engines from Mexico and electronics from Canada are either delayed or too expensive. Dealers in rural and industrial regions say they're getting just a fraction of their normal stock. Used truck prices have spiked 15% as new inventory dwindles. The working backbone of America, small business owners, contractors, farmers, losing vital tools to earn a living. Then there's Chrysler, once a symbol of American refinement and innovation, now reduced to a brand fighting for relevance. The Windsor plant shutdown halts Pacifica production entirely. The aging 300 sedan approaches possible extinction. Thousands of Chrysler workers face uncertainty about the brand's long-term viability. Could Chrysler's storied history come to a quiet end in this tariff-driven storm? The numbers are staggering. Stellantis faces an estimated $41.9 billion in extra costs over the next 12 to 18 months.
Stellantis, of course, they were talking about pulling a lot of stuff out of North America because they're not making any money here. Then they promised, we're going to invest in the United States. And if they ended up shutting down some of these factories, that's what Stellantis wanted to do in the first place anyways.
That's not a typo. $41 billion. Nearly 40% of the financial burden across the entire auto industry falls on this one company. Why? Their cross-border production strategies, once brilliant cost-saving measures, turned from cost-saving to cost-crushing the moment tariffs were introduced. For consumers, the math is equally painful. A $28,000 Jeep Compass could soon push past $32,000. A basic Ram 1500 might edge toward $50,000. Economists predict $2,000 to $4,000 increases per vehicle across the board. It also widens the gap between people who can absorb a few thousand in unexpected cost and those who can't. Auto loans become increasingly expensive as prices surge, pushing many potential buyers out of the market entirely. Who can still afford to purchase new vehicles in this economy? The International Monetary Fund has already issued warnings that ongoing trade wars could reduce global economic growth by 0.5% annually, a significant drag on an already fragile recovery. What started as an auto industry problem is rapidly becoming everyone's problem.
And I was asking her about, walk me through the implications of what's happening here in Windsor. And she said there's those direct jobs, but then there's all the other plants that feed into it, right? So this is the supply chain. And there's potentially a knock-on effect of thousands more of people who could, either have a reduction in hours or a loss of employment.
It really is in the middle, man. It really is caught in the middle because at the end of the day, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Another layoff? Come on, cuz. They know what they're doing.
The question hanging over assembly lines from Detroit to Windsor to Toluca: what happens next? United Auto Workers union leaders are demanding federal intervention as layoffs exceed initial projections. The tension between labor and management, already strained by recent strikes, now threatens to boil over completely.
That the math doesn't work. When you're making cars in 6 to 7% profit margins and suddenly you're faced with having to impose a surtax to your customer or absorb it of 4 times that.
U.S. plants dependent on Canadian and Mexican parts are slowing or idling. 900 additional American workers laid off due to cross-border supply chain shutdowns. The irony is impossible to miss. A policy intended to bolster domestic car production ends up shuttering North American plants instead. Used vehicle prices rise in tandem with new car inflation, creating a perfect storm for consumers. The automotive market is shifting beneath our feet, leaving both industry veterans and everyday car buyers struggling to find solid ground. For iconic American brands like Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, this crisis poses existential questions. Can they survive in a world where global supply chains clash with nationalistic tariff measures? The contradiction is stark. These symbols of American automotive pride rely heavily on international cooperation to exist. Factory workers describe the situation as living day to day. Families who've built their lives around steady automotive jobs now face uncertain futures. Communities built around these plants watch anxiously as economic foundations crack. How high must the prices go before a new wave of consumer rebellion emerges? Will Ram's loyal working class base shift to other brands if supply doesn't improve? Can Stellantis pivot quickly enough to save these American icons? A legendary empire built on free trade is crumbling, and we're all watching it happen in real time.